Good morning, please be seated. Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me especially welcome our special guests, former President of Georgia, Mr. Mikheil Saakashvili, for accepting our invitation to participate at this summit and to share his experiences and his thoughts. It has taken quite some effort to get him here, missing, I am told, about 2 different flights, and ultimately getting onto one that brought him here at 4 a.m. But when my team and I were considering who would lead the discussions having regard to the theme that we had chosen for this summit, I said it had to be somebody who had undergone what we are undergoing and who was able to turn it around. And I said to them that, look, I stumbled upon a documentary about Georgia's electricity, and if there was anything that was worse than what we have seen, it was in that country. All sorts of illegal and underhand connections. Everything that we have experienced, they experienced. But he turned it around, and there is reliable power in Georgia today. For us, these are the kind of experiences that we draw.
President Mikheil Saakashvili, former president of Georgia, became the president at the age of 37, the youngest ever so to do in Georgia. I'm sorry, technology is failing me here. Oh, there we are. Okay. Please bear with me. It's taking time to load. I don't know why. Thank you. I have it. Mikheil Saakashvili was elected president of Georgia in 2004. At age 37, he was the youngest national president elected in Europe, following a bloodless revolution that ousted his predecessor, President Eduard Shevardnadze. President Saakashvili served 2 terms before stepping down in November 2013 in what was the first peaceful transition of power in Georgia. He began his career in Georgian politics in 1995 as an elected member of parliament. In 2000, he was appointed Minister of Justice of Georgia, where he focused on investigating and exposing government corruption and instituting judicial reforms. A lawyer by training, obviously. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our distinct privilege to host such a man in Lagos, a man who powered Georgia as we intend to power Lagos, who saw a real opportunity to create endless possibilities, and he seized it. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please welcome with me His Excellency, President Mikheil Saakashvili, to create endless possibilities, and he seized it. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please welcome with me His Excellency, President Mikheil Saakashvili, former President of Georgia, as he takes us through powering Lagos, real opportunities, endless possibilities.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, Mr. Governor, Babatunde Rajapaksa, SAN. Thank you for inviting me here. I took this invitation without hesitation because I know how interesting the processes that you are doing, you personally, Governor, as a reformer, and in a very, very challenging environment. Indeed, a few weeks ago, my mother also came to Nigeria for her own business. She is a professor. And she told me lots of stories about wonderful people that live here. I actually happened to study at the Kiev University in the end of 80s, beginning of 90s, and I had one of the best friends I had were from Nigeria. And I had very good experiences with them in what was another system, another country. Well, I fully understand your challenges. I took over a country in 2004 that was a failed state. That was, you rightly said, Mr. Governor, in worse conditions that you ever were in recent years. We should realize that in the 90s, Georgia was a world recordsman in terms of dropping of GDP. Our GDP dropped in 4 years or 4 or 5 years by 75%. Government could not supply, by the time we took over, 80% of the population with electricity. Not a single kilometer of road had been built for more than 15 years. We had, most of the cities had no water and sewage systems running or functioning efficiently. Some of them didn't have at all any systems. We had crime rate that was one of the highest in the world. And we had corruption rate, which was one of the highest in the world. So here we come with the group of young reformers, not knowing what to do, where to start. So we come in and people are burning tires in the streets, protesting against lack of light, shooting everywhere, people are shot, lots of criminality. And we had to do very fast reforms. And of course, we couldn't pay salaries. So first thing we did is that we committed group of young anti-corruption investigators and new tax collectors. We asked international organizations for money to pay as a cash for them to have salaries. And I was thinking to myself, if we could increase income of Georgia by 15% in 6 months, then maybe we could start paying other things. Well, we doubled tax collection within that 6 months. And then we started a comprehensive change of our several things. For instance, in 2 months into my presidency, we decided that it was hopeless to reform our Georgian police service, and we fired all of them. We basically, and so for 3 months, my country had no police force left. And you would be surprised, but crime rate didn't go up. And because it turned out that police was very much part of the problem rather than the solution. So the point was that we had to change this. We introduced universal exams. We also changed the customs service and tax service. In Georgia, we had 27 taxes when I took over, and the tax liabilities that people had in rear taxes was up to several $billion. First thing we did was tax amnesty. We forgave people liabilities for 2 to 3 billion taxes, but then we lowered the number of taxes down to 6 taxes. We lowered the tax rate overall the tax burden by 65%. We, for instance, brought down the VAT down to 18%. We brought we had social tax and income tax. We merged them. Then one was 30% and the other was 25%, and we brought them to 20%. And what we also did, we changed the whole system how these taxes were collected. And actually, when we slashed taxes to number 6, and when we lowered the tax burden by 65%, for the years of my presidency, tax collection and then the state budget went up 12 times. We had 12 times bigger budget, which is the index of legalizing the economy and decreased corruption. And you should see what situations we were acting in. 70% of the country was controlled by separatists, which were very violent. We had terrorist attacks all the time. We were all the time under attack from Russia. In the end, in 2008, Russia fought war in Georgia, couldn't take over capital, but occupied the separatist controlled areas. We came under full energy embargo from Russia. We were getting 100% of our gas and 80% of our electricity from Russia. One day it all disappeared. We lost, in one day, we sold 70% of our export market. And when we stayed without Russian energy, we suddenly realized we had to cope on our own. So we had to refurbish the whole sector. It was a hard change, but basically by creating the base, first of all, killing corruption, because it looks like most of the electricity was just going, people were earning money on people not having electricity, on all kinds of schemes for which they were swapping electricity to Russia, to Turkey, and pocketing the money, and then generated by new facilities. Now the hydropower, for instance, the money to the hydropower, FDI to hydropower became the chief generator of economic growth in Georgia. Now we lost most of our export market, but the year after that we diversified and we had economic growth of 13%. And overall, in nominal terms, in 9 years of my presidency, we had first 4 years to double-digit growth. Then we had war and world economic crisis, so we had 3% contraction, but then we had 6, 7, 9, and 11% growth after that. So that's, and the way, and in terms of tax burdens, we were the third lowest tax burden country in the world after Qatar and Hong Kong. So that really shows you where we went and how we went there. And I think the main thing was that we really had this situation when we had to believe in what we were doing. You know, it was really a hopeless situation. We recruited really young people. And I think the main recipe for it is that you bring people who believe that this is their country, that this is their commitment, this is their future, this is their children. There are no blueprints by which you can say, okay, that's how we do it, and it happens. No, you have conviction. And of course we changed things. We had hundreds of regulations. We had all kinds of agencies that were not really doing anything, except, you know, pocketing bribes. And you know, we slashed lots of agencies. We took big scissors and we cut 90% of regulations. Suddenly we had no sanitary inspection in Georgia. So you would think, without sanitary inspection, they were telling us people will get poisoned en masse. Restaurants will poison people, but which owner of the restaurant wants to poison its customers or patrons? It's obvious that they were, instead of expanding their business, they were paying money to sanitary inspectors. Or which business owner wants to catch fire, right? And we had a number of fire inspectors that were going around every business every month. So we had, and you know, it says we are 5 million people country. So I have my theory. 5 million people country, it's still possible to do reforms. 1 million is possible. Ideal size is maybe your size, the size of state of Lagos, and I will explain you why. Because if you're 5 million, we have fired 100,000 people in the capital. Now look, these people, we didn't send them to labor camps. They still live in downtown. They still enjoy life. They still have nice houses, nice cars. Every time they had to have protest rallies against my presidency, they could walk or drive on their nice cars to the presidency and express their hatred for what I did to them. So it's a hard thing, you know, like, because and then you change the mentality, because we cut all these regulations and agencies, and these people, they live next to you, you know. But that guy who lived next to the same stairwell as, like, say, for my family of my mother, he was head of some agency. He wasn't going to his work. I would involve my childhood watching playing chess and backgammon in our yard. But he would get every month his money for what was his agency so-called was doing or stopping the others to do. Customs. We fired the entire customs service. And we changed the philosophy of customs, because the way it is, you know, I remember my friend Turkish Prime Minister Erdogan came to see me. I told him, look, we have these new big terminals, and to pass through it, every truck takes 7 minutes. If it's more than 7 minutes, it's already a problem. If it's more than 1 hour, the entire ship gets fired. He looked at me a little bit, you know, he wants to change, he wants to change Turkey. He says, but where do you find such customs officers who would work for such harsh conditions, right? I said, come, I'll show you. So I took to them, and there are these young boys and girls sitting and smiling. And some of them speak Turkish, English, you know, all kinds of other foreign languages. And they smiled there and they said, look at them. The problem, Recep, is that these big guys are not customs officers. We took them from model agencies. They are basically young models. Everything else is done by computers, it's software. Software software doesn't want to lie or cheat, right? Okay. And if you give discretion to somebody who calls himself or herself a customs officer, then you have trouble. So software knows exact codes and knows what cargo goes, and it's very easy to do that. It's just a matter of political will. And for the same token, one of the main things we did is decentralization in terms of course, we are a small country, but very diverse. And the biggest construction boom we experienced was in the autonomous region called Ajara, because we gave all the powers to local government to do it. And they really did it with their heart. Even in a small country, when you have central government taking every small decision, this is usually break for major progress. Because bureaucrats are there to stop things, not to promote. Because if you are a much bigger country than you're a federal country, but you know, from my experience, if you are central government and you see, oh, there's this rising governor there who does nice things, and you are, say, for instance, prime minister. We have good prime ministers, but all of them are human, right? So they say, okay, this rising governor might want my job in 2 years if he's very successful. So there is this issue with jealousy which they experience. And there are lots of other issues, and usually people know locally much better in any democracy what is better for them, and they're closer to people who do it because they can control them more. So from that standpoint, we really had change, and for a small country, change also expresses itself in benchmarks. World Bank, for all 9 years of my presidency, every year they had this big index, proclaimed Georgia as world's #1 reformer, which meant that year no other country made more progress in terms of making things easy for the economy than Georgia in the world. We were number 137 on World Bank Index of Ease of Doing Business. At the beginning of my presidency, we went down to up to number 8, which is to say we were the first developing country ever to enter top 10 of World Bank Index. We did, what we changed also, we did perception of public service. We did one space, one window thing, we did public service halls. These are the places, the most beautiful buildings we built, commissioned lots of world architectures, and then lots of younger Georgians put up. They are big glass buildings. By the way, all the new buildings were built of glass so that they could be seen transparently. Police buildings, judge court buildings, and these buildings. And if you look at these buildings, like the biggest one in our capital, it's like big shopping mall for government services. Every day, 45,000 plus people go there. And it's one principle. Everybody looks at each other. It's all glass. There are no lines. And you go there to pay taxes, to register property, to even get your school certificate. Now, Georgia has the world's fastest registration of property, according to FC, world's fastest registration of companies, world's fastest customs procedure, world's fastest ID issuance. And so these procedures are all done in this one hall. And it's very easy to do things. Because you go there, you want to do, say, build a restaurant, it takes a few minutes to get permission. You want to sell or buy, a few minutes. Georgia has become, we have lots of industries. We managed to have, we started from agriculture industry, and we are even building jets. But you know what became the Georgia's biggest export? We became the biggest re-exporter of cars. Which is to say, we export cars, we don't produce cars. But the reason is that in Georgia, to buy and sell cars, it's 3 to 4 minutes. And everybody from the region comes there to do it. So the idea was that we don't have oil and gas like all our neighbors, but we had almost all our neighbors, but we have something that they don't have. We have no red tape, we have no corruption, because in corruption, we were top in Europe, according to the European Union. We were the least corrupt economy in Europe last 3 years of my presidency. And on crime rate, we were the highest crime rate in Europe. In fact, 18% of organized crime bosses all over former Soviet states come from Georgia. We have this dubious privilege. But Georgia is the safest country of Europe, safer than Iceland, which is an island, obviously. So that tells you the story that, you know, when you kill corruption, say in police service and other service, when you make these things transparent, by the way, when you bring energy to the country, because Russia stopped our export to their market, the only thing we were exporting all these years to Russia, since the last several years, was electricity, because Russia needed it and we had actually surplus of it suddenly. And we lit up streets and we put cameras everywhere. Another thing when you resist criminality, because if all the streets are lit and if you have cameras everywhere, it's very easy to control. And poverty rates. We had 52% of Georgians lived less than $2 a day at the beginning. Now it's less than 18%. Well, it's still a high percentage, but it's still big progress for all these years. And we also did, so when I'm saying what we do, what is our impact? Going back to what I said, we don't have oil and gas, but we have no crime, no red tape. We have, we basically have no corruption or almost no corruption, because if you look at the dates on opinion polls, 96% of Georgians said in 2004, let's say at the beginning of my government, that they interacted with corruption. 96%. In 2012, in the same polls done by Gallup, it was less than 2%. And when I asked what this 2% were, by the way, because I was always interested, people mostly said medical doctors. And then again, we had to change that system and we had to build 150 new hospitals and entirely move to private insurance system funded by the government companies. So having said that, that brings even development. And the idea is that the way how Georgia's growth was developing all this year, despite all these instabilities I explained, was that FDI was coming because it was easy to build business. It was a nice place to be in. When I became president, we had 100,000 tourists a year. When I finished my presidency, we had 6 million. And besides, we have a nice country. We have 6 climatic zones, and we starting from this desert, and you can ski and swim at the same time 7 months a year. But there are other things we did. For instance, we annihilated visas for basically almost all countries. You know, we had war with Russia. So obviously Russia, we had no diplomatic relations, and Russia wanted to destroy our statehood. Russian president personally promised to get me killed. One of the very few promises here, bad promises he still couldn't deliver for all these years. But in 2009, 1 year after the war, I initiated the abolition visa regime with Russia unilaterally. And the reason I did it was that people were saying it's crazy, it's against our security, it's exactly for our security. Because more of them we can bring to our country and show that we are a normal country, that without having oil and gas, people are smiling in the streets, police is not harassing you, it's a fast developing country, more they will be compelled to tell their government not to continue with the adventures toward this small but very promising and progressive country. And it's exactly the effect we reached, because after 2 or 3 years, then President Medvedev said, in his public speech to Russian parliament, he said, well, I really hate this Saakashvili guy, but by the way, we have to learn from what they did in terms of reforms and apply them in Russia. But they couldn't, because again, the top principle difference is very simple. Either you believe in your country or you don't. Either you steal or you don't. Either you build something for everybody, or you just build something for yourself. That was at least our experience from Georgia's transition. So in terms of course, having said point in this picture, it's not that rosy and it's not that simple. People were suffering a lot. Lots of people are still suffering. In 2007, there were mass rallies against my government, against my reforms, and I had to resign because I said, okay, after we resigned after we cracked down, fields were calm. This was organized by a Russian oligarch billionaire. And then I said, okay, now that things are calm, and basically the guy fled the country, and nothing was menacing my power, I said, now I resign and let people decide in new elections what they want. They want continuation of reforms or not. So I cut my presidential term by 1 year. And they voted with slimmer margin than first time, but they still voted for continuation of the reform. And second time, we had the same story when you have a Russian oligarch who basically had $7 billion and Georgia's GDP was a little bit more than 20 billion. When I started, as I said, it was around 7 or 8 billions. So actually, it was around 20 something. If you do the same thing what in Nigeria did, maybe it would have been much more, but still. By the way, I agree what you did, it's exactly the right thing to apply. But then the guy showed up and said, I have the 7 billion, and you know, this government is telling you, you should work. They are telling you, you should become new Singapore, and you know, Singaporeans work a lot. You don't have to work, I'm telling you. Stay home. I have this village, and he sustained his village for 5 years. He changed their roofs, he gave them 500 euros a month, or nothing. He had so-called free hospital there. Said, you see, in my village where 500 people live, everybody is like that. Now all 5 millions will live like that. And in a still medium income country, lower to medium income, in Georgia was, when it became we're a poor country, people go for such promises. And people went and voted for it. But you know, I still believe it's good. Because it's not enough for government to explain people all the time what's good for them, what's bad. It's experience that in democracy does the wonders. Because we already managed to give them 9 years of success and tradition of how it looks, institutions that are strong. Now we have a new government that says, we came with a platform, we hate everything that the previous one did. So we came with a platform to destroy not only our institutions, but to destroy beautiful glass buildings we built, skyscrapers we built. They had a long list saying we'll destroy this 40-story skyscraper, we'll destroy this bridge, we'll destroy this opera theater. They couldn't touch anything. They went after people, that's normal. I mean, from such you could expect from people with such radical platform, but they couldn't touch a single institution. Police is still not corrupt, customs is still not corrupt, things are still moving, procedures are still fast. Because when institutions already exist, they outlive those who change them. And that's our biggest experience. The experience is that the main legacy of any reform should not be somebody else's personal cult, obviously. Because I've seen many people around in my neighborhood, they're building their golden statues and all kind of stuff and calling streets after them. Not a nice experience, because you should know once you are changed, first thing the next guy will do is to get rid of your statues. But, you know, like, for instance, there was the opposition in Georgia. We built this wonderful tower. It was private business, private enterprise, a beautiful, long, high tower. And they were saying, well, this is, you know, Saakashvili erecting monuments, not maybe to full size of himself, but maybe even to some parts of himself. And they said, well, okay, there are lots of dictators in the neighborhood who do full-fledged statues of themselves. It's not about that. What we are doing is that we are changing something that will be much longer, will not look like us, but will always remind people of us. And that's, I'm sure, what will outlive a legacy of this government here as well. Because really I saw, I mean, it's an amazing plan. Nigeria in general as a country, it's as, in a way, as perfect as imperfect, as it looks as perfect as human race. Look at it, as imperfect it is, basically. Because everything together, it's really so much human energy. You feel it every second of it when you step on this land. Amazing human energy, amazing euphoric force that can be turned to good. But it really takes leadership to do it. It's very hard to attain it and to write this way, but once you write it, you make it. And I'm sure the steps you are making here, and you know, I saw Governor with what love and affection he was explaining and describing what they are doing in terms of helping agriculturals, helping people to get more energy. And we went through all this and we know what it means. But what I also went, because we went through it, I know that this is not done by technocrats. Simple. We got lots of international organizations saying, giving advices to us, you know, like giving advices to us and saying that, you know, like, you should do this, you do that, and we would do the opposite very often. And I remember in 2004 we started our reforms by cutting taxes. IMF told us, you know, we are warning you, we'll stop your program in 6 months, you are doing crazy mistakes. They criticized us everywhere. In 1 year, they published a report saying, we are so happy we supported the government's reforms. And so, you know, my experience is that don't listen to them, listen to your heart, and do what is right. And I saw this here, and I'm sure this is the country of great heart. This is the state with biggest potential of this amazing country. And I envy you because there are lots of challenges, but the wonderful life becomes wonderful when you have to overcome challenges. So good luck with your endeavors, and thank you very much.
First bank, foundation, the black bank. First bank, foundation, the black bank.
Now we train our drivers for safety, and we have a 5 center, 5% of